Dear ones, is the last day of our series, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. It is my prayer that you have found love in the right places. That starts with being right here and the lessons that we've shared over the last few weeks. And I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, well, keep it to yourself. I don't mean that. Oh, but today we are going to be looking for love in the most unexpected places. Will you pray with me? Lord God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Palm Sunday. It's Palm Sunday. Did you ever think we'd get here? There's such a festive spirit in the air. Did you feel it? Did you feel it up the street, those of you who went up and with the Episcopalians and walking down and singing, and those of you who were here who greeted us with your palms and singing? It's quite a scene, isn't it? And we can all get caught up in the excitement of a parade, can't we? I love parades. And I'll tell you, the Electric Light Parade downtown Boulder City, that first weekend in December, is my favorite. Have you been there? How many of you have been to that parade? A lot of you know what I'm talking about. Well, it's usually on a cool night. Some years it's downright cold. And we take our lawn chairs and we line Nevada way and we wait with great expectations, wrapped in a blanket. And then here comes the guy on a little cart selling hot chocolate and marshmallows. Hot chocolate and marshmallows, a blanket, a beautiful evening. It is the perfect setting for the parade of local businesses and clubs and athletic teams and those little cars that the Shriners drive. They crack me up. And each car and group and float that goes by is decorated with as many lights as possible as they roll down the street. Now, Ashley shared my favorite part of parade, candy, right? Do you remember us little kids sitting there waiting? We didn't have candy at home. My mother was mean and didn't buy candy for us. And so, that's a mean mom, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so parades were fabulous. And we might come away with one or two pieces, but I'd sit and I'd wait. Which one? And you'd see them down the block throwing, please throw, please throw. Then you'd dash out and grab it. And today my favorite part of parades is watching kids watch for the candy and then dashing out. Just the joy on their faces is wonderful. Our scripture today is about a parade. Jesus entering Jerusalem. And really, what was an unexpected event. I don't know that he knew it would be a parade like it was. Just a few days before this entry to Jerusalem, while they were still en route, Jesus shared with his disciples that once they arrived in Jerusalem, he would be handed over to the chief priests and to the scribes. And he told them, I'll be condemned to death. I'll be mocked and flogged and crucified. And as if that wasn't enough, Jesus then tells these disciples that on the third day he would be raised from the dead. Do you think they even knew what he was talking about? Now, scripture doesn't tell us their response, but I imagine they were scared at what was to come. As they approached Jerusalem, I suspect they did so with trepidation and caution. But I don't think they had any idea of the unexpected events that awaited them in Jerusalem. And just outside of town at Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, they stopped. And Jesus sent 2 disciples into the village to get him some transportation. It appears it was prearranged, although we don't know how, but it seemed curious that Jesus says, go into that one house, you know, the one on the corner that has a donkey and a colt. You've gotten those directions before. You go a little ways down and there's a white house. You take a left, right? But here it is, and he assures them, if anyone asks, just tell them, no, it's okay. The Lord needs it. And Matthew then explains to us, the readers, why this was done. And here, Matthew quotes the prophet Zechariah. And he says, this was done to fulfill what has been spoken through the prophet Zechariah, tell the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So here prophecy was being fulfilled. Now I want to remind you that it was Passover time. Do you have any idea how many people were in Jerusalem for Passover? Throw out some numbers. Anybody? Bunches. That's the technical term. Well, they did a survey, a census, 30 years after Jesus was there. And they determined 250,000, sorry, let me get this right. 250,000 lambs were slain. Now, they weren't counting people, they were counting lambs. So, 250,000 lambs, 225, is that right? 1,000? 250? Whatever, I wasn't what? I know I wasn't, thank you, Jesus. So, 250,000 lambs were slain. Now, it's not a one-on-one. It's not one lamb per person. It was one lamb per a group of at least 10. So, somebody do the math. I'm not going to do it. 2.5 million people were in Jerusalem. Can you imagine? This mass of humanity that was there for Passover. Jews from all over the world were there for Passover. Jesus couldn't have chosen a more dramatic moment to make his historic and unexpected entrance into Jerusalem. And here comes Jesus, sitting tall on a donkey, colt following behind. And this huge crowd lays their cloaks on the ground for the donkey to walk on. Others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Some waved and shouted, wave and shout for me, please. Wave, 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 wave. Hosanna to the Son of David. Say with me, Hosanna to the Son of David. Oh, some of you are just not even really getting into this. That's okay. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna. Oh, that was awesome. Nicely done. These were accolades for a king. And the crowd received Jesus as king, as their king, as an unexpected king. Because you see, he was not the kind of king that they thought was coming. Jesus was a servant king, one who would allow himself to be crucified for their sake, one who would take on the role of a convicted criminal to set all of us free. Now, do you ever wonder why they shouted Hosanna? Anyone tell me what Hosanna means?
Save us.
Save us. Oh, she's been in Bible study. Nicely done. Yes, it means, well, I always thought of it as more of a, like, woohoo, right? Don't you? Because that's how we receive it today. Very excited, this triumphant entry into Jerusalem. But it actually means, it's save us, but it's also save now, right? It was essentially the people's cry for deliverance and for help in their day of need. It's an oppressed people crying out to their Savior and King. I'm sure you all recall, the Jews were an oppressed people. They were oppressed by the Romans, and they were anxiously and eagerly awaiting the birth and the coming of Messiah, the king that they believed would overthrow the Roman government and bring peace to the land. So these enthusiastic people along the parade route believed that they were witnessing history. They believed that the man on the donkey was their Messiah, their God and King, come to save them, those oppressed. And their disappointment came Friday when he was executed Those days were days away. That they didn't know about that yet. But today, they were beseeching him, save now. There's so much in this story that is unexpected. We don't see it as unexpected because we've read the story for years and we just, yep, that's how it was. But imagine how it was for the folks who were there. The disciples had to have been caught off guard when Jesus even told them we're going back to Jerusalem. And then imagine as Jesus told them that not only will they go back to Jerusalem, but he knows he will die while there. And then unbelievably raised back to life. Clearly, this could not have been something that they were expecting or anticipating. It was an unexpected and unusual set of circumstances. The crowd received him as king. They did so especially knowing that he wouldn't be well received later in the week by the chief priests and scribes. And they were watching, right? The chief priests scheming and plotting. How can we put this uprising down? I suspect the disciples were caught off guard by the fuss, but not Jesus. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew what God's plan was and was prepared to live through the worst week in history. His own torture, death, and burial. And to have to watch the response of those people that Jesus loved and those who loved him in return must have been agonizing. And even though he told the disciples what was going to happen, I can't imagine any of them fully understood the gravity of the events as they unfolded. Clearly unexpected. So I leave you with these questions. What is it that we expect of Jesus? Is he meeting our expectations? And probably more importantly, are we meeting his? I'd like to close with this video. And while you're watching, I want you to consider the ways that we are all called to be part of something new and unexpected. Jesus was the master of unexpected. Next Sunday, of course, we will experience the ultimate in unexpected when we find the empty tomb. Please watch.